All right, hello and welcome. For those of you here in Schaumburg, I hope you have enjoyed the show. I know we're almost wrapped up with the day. All of the presentations held in this room are also part of the M&S Symposium, which is an online educational conference we've been running since 2020. This is our first time doing a hybrid event in partnership with Central States. So we have an in-person component as well as virtual viewers. So everything is being live streamed, as has been the case with all of the past symposia. For everyone online, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. The entire symposium is sponsored by the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society. So we're very grateful to them for continuing to allow us to do this. So for this presentation, we are joined by Stephen Petty. So Stephen, you can go ahead and turn your camera back on and unmute. And I think you're making some last minute edits to your PowerPoint. So let's get that presentation running again.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Petty, and I'm here to share with you some experience from lessons learned on the sale of a seeded dollar collection last summer. I wanted to thank Len and the Newman Numismatic Portal for this opportunity. I think you'll find it pretty candid and perhaps helpful. The collection that I'm talking about was sold through Legend and their Legend Regency 53 Seo and Bellagio at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. And the collection was sold in July 28th of 2022. It was at the time either the second or third finest collection of seeded dollars. It was complete, including a 70S. A little bit about the collection. It was started by myself and my son, who passed away in 2011. And there are 44 coins in the set. The average grade was MS62 plus, and I had that collection for a better part of 16 years. It was known as the M&S Collection after my son Mark and myself. Just some highlights and lowlights. Probably in my estimation, the best coin in the sale was an 1850 O. It was the finest known by at least 2 grades. And it had only sold once in almost 40 years. So it was an old rattler holder. It's cacked, just a gorgeous coin. What I'm going to do for you folks that are watching is on the right, you'll see I'm going to be very candid about what I paid for the coin, what its estimate was at auction, and what it sold for. So here you can see that it wasn't inexpensive, especially for somebody with modest means. It was $110,000 when I bought it. The estimate at sale was $120,000, and it realized $140,000. The second one is the 70S, and for those who are familiar with this series, there's only 9 known. This was one of the poorer ones, probably out of the 9 known. It was like number 8. It was known as the Boyd specimen. I paid upwards of $130,000 for it. The estimate was $175,000, and it realized $141,000. Interestingly enough, at Fun, I saw a dealer had this coin and was asking over $200,000. The next one was a spectacular piece on the highlight side, 73cc. It's one of the, even though it was only graded AU 55, there were only 3 cacked at that level, and a lot of the 73cc's were really AU coins that had been pushed up to MS60. This was labeled as a Carter specimen on the holder, but it was actually the stack specimen. I paid over $100,000 for it. The estimate was 70 plus, and it realized 117.5. Finally, one of the nicer coins as well was tied for the finest known, the 43, a common date, but not in CAC and not at this grade. It was a 64 plus. And obviously I paid almost a little over 53,000. The estimate was 45, and it realized a little over 61. Now on the other side of the coin, the 58 proof, which I included in the set, it's a proof only year. It was non-cacked, bought it early. It's an MS or a proof 63. I paid almost a little over 13,000. The estimate was 10. Price realized, including juice, was just under 10,000. And it's not as dark as it looks in this photograph, but it clearly wasn't as nice a coin regardless. Another coin that, interestingly enough, is a NGC MS64, was not cacked. Arguably, this is distorted in terms of its color, but its color was still dark. I paid about 6,500 for it. The estimate was 6,500, and it realized 5,170. Interestingly enough, I had a PCGS MS63 CAC, which I did not put in the sale, and still retain. So it's pretty obvious that CAC helps a lot. But for seeded dollars, where we're looking, and all these coins were, almost all of them were less than in the top 10 or so known. And to find them in the top 10 or so known in CAC is very difficult. Some lessons learned as far as why I made a decision to sell. They were really fourfold. One, because people were really surprised that I sold the set. My view was that the economy was going to, in 2023, was probably going to be worse and go downhill. Speculation on my part. I also felt that the coin market might be at a slight peak, and that it probably would take some time to come back up to another peak. I did not want to leave the burden of selling this collection, which realized somewhat over 1.5 million, to my wife should something happen to me. And then there was also the issue that there was another major collector that had two registered seeded dollar sets. One was the Legend Collection, which is the best known. Mine and their second set were very close. I think mine was just a little bit better, but it was my realization that at some point this collector probably wouldn't want two top sets of seeded dollars. So there's a limited number of people out there that have money to buy these sorts of coins. So I wanted to beat them to the punch. In terms of some lessons learned, this might be a little difficult for you to read, but it was in Coin World, and it was an observation that looking at the prices paid for higher graded peace dollars over time, and that over 9 years the prices had actually dropped about 2% per year. Just by way of reference, my seeded dollar set sold for about 6.5% over what I paid for it 15 years ago or so, which is about 0.4% per year. An observation is that the silver coins, especially in high grades, have not really appreciated unless they're very much at the top, very much. Whereas I can tell you that many of my gold coins have more than doubled in price over that time frame. So maybe there's an opportunity in silver with time because they haven't really gone up all that much. But the reality is that gold has really appreciated relative to silver. Some other observations that I want to share with you. This is an old adage, but do buy the best coins that you can buy with your budget. There's just no denying the fact that coins that are CAC'd and PCGS holders bring more money and hold their values, particularly on the high end. Work with a major auction house or someone you know. I did purchase most of my coins from Legend. I worked with Laura Sperber. She gives some credit for this. The coins that I'd really thought I'd paid too much for, and some of those early ones you'll see I paid way over sheets for some of those coins, and yet I still made money on them. A couple of other things that you may or may not know. You can negotiate the seller fee with respect to hammer. In other words, if a coin sold for $100, you can get anywhere from $90 to about $110 or $120, $112. And so that's negotiable. And obviously the more valuable the collection, the higher you get as a portion of hammer. And you say, well, how can you get more than hammer? Well, the auction houses are typically selling for approaching 20% over hammer. So you're getting a portion of that fee. You will be pushed, and I was, to sell the entire collection at once. I think in many respects, me selling it all at once was a mistake. Probably should have sold it in at least two chunks, even though it was only 44 coins, simply because for a given area of collection, there's only so much money in the room. And you really are better off to break it up, in my opinion. The other issue I put here is timing. The sale was in July. I received some comments and criticisms for selling it in July, but by the time you make the decision, in my case in January, by the time it actually gets into a named auction, it takes some time. But I probably would have been better off to sell it either a little bit later or a little bit earlier. Do pay attention to the state of the coin market. I know you can't time it, but over time you will see trends in pricing of coins. I was obviously a little bit late. I can say this because most of the coins, not only for my coins, but there was a set of quarters just before me that virtually got no bids. And even mine were, most of the coins really bid at the internet bids. It was quite quiet. I was pleasantly surprised we did as well as we did, but do watch the trends. Is the market for those coins strong or dead? And try to avoid, obviously, if it's a dead market. An observation: it's really hard for a collector to make money on most collections. With buyer's fees approaching 20% and dealers wanting to buy a gray sheet or 20% below retail, you can have a swing of 40% between what you pay for it and what you're going to get offered to sell it for. And I just say, remember, it's a hobby. I mean, we all think we're going to make money on these coins, especially if we buy big, nice, expensive coins. But as the coin prices go up, of course, the number of people can buy them goes way down. And there's large margins that are made between gray sheet and retail. And only the best coins truly hold their value with time. You do see the top pops, and that was the case with me. All my top pops sold for really good money. But even when you sink down to the second or third or fourth best known, the pricing falls way off. And mainly because those are expensive coins, and there's limited people with that, and the people with that kind of money want the top pop. In my case, obviously I didn't lose money, which I was grateful for, but I didn't make a lot of money. The key, I think, is be patient. I know if you're early on and trying to put a set together, you want to fill the holes, as it were, but patience is key. The coins will come up, and wait for the right coin. Do watch out for collecting mint state coins. I started out putting a collection. My goal was to put an XFAU collection together. I got the champagne taste, had a few more resources, and started buying mint state coins. Here's the real problem. There's serious gradeflation, in my opinion, in mint state. They call market grading. And if you have a coin, like my 64s have almost no marks on them at all. But I began to see a lot of 62s being put in 63, 64 holders. And the problem is that if you don't have two bidders where somebody recognizes this is a legit nice 64, for example, you can get hurt because the gradeflation means there's more coins at that given grade than there probably should be. And given the fact there are upwards of 22 grades in mint state, which I don't know how anybody can tell the difference, I always dared people to take my coins and cover the covers and see which ones were 3s and 4s. I think people would have a real hard time getting them right. But you got to be really careful with mint state coins if you're collecting the best or close to the best, because there's going to be a lot of coins that probably aren't really that great. They can call it market grading, but the reality is it dilutes by increasing numbers the values of your nice coins. All righty. My favorite phrase is you're not truly a collector until you've sold a collection. And that tells you a lot about the other side of the market, which you don't experience if you're just buying and not ever selling. I know it's a pretty quick, pretty candid presentation, but more willing to take any questions at this point. Thank you for your time and attention.
All right, thank you very much. We can get the lights back up in the room here. And then Stephen, I'll have you go ahead and stop your screen share. The top of that screen, you got it. I won't finish explaining. All righty, let me get that. There we go. Okay. If you're watching in Zoom, you're welcome to send in questions through the Q&A. There's a button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. Just click on that and send in your questions. I will read any off anonymously, so you don't need to worry about whether or not that box is checked. Otherwise, we don't have any in there yet. So are there any from in the room?
Hey, Steve. So if someone wanted to start a seeded dollar collection today, what would you counsel them about maybe what's the best grade to collect, or you know, a general approach if they think maybe they're going to do this over like a 5-year period?
I'm really a believer that the sweet spot is high AU, only because there's in my opinion less games in the grading. I know that people argue that market grading of mint state coins is the way it's done, et cetera. But if you're kind of a purist and you read the grading books, you just get hurt there. If you buy a true high-end mint state coin, you're going to get diluted out. Whereas there's less, you know, there's only a handful of grades even in AU. There's not 22 different demarcations. So I think you can get a very nice looking coin. People would like to try to do XF, but there's just hardly any specimens in that grade range, like a lot of other series. But you can find some AUs if you really want a top end set. And obviously, if you could do AU 58 or even AU 55, that would be the place to go, I think.
All right. If you could go back in time, would you purchase differently?
Yeah, I'd probably stay more with the AU grades. Having said that, I really was lucky in many respects that at the time I started to put the set together in mint state, there were 4 or 5 major seeded dollar collections that came to market. And it was right at a point where my business was doing really well and I had the money. And so I was fortunate in the set that in the sense that it's very, very difficult to put together a complete set of seeded dollars, especially because there's only 9 70S's, and then there are the 5152 and the 73cc and the 71cc are very difficult in high grade. And so I think I was the 5th person in history to complete that set. So that tells you how tough it is. But I think there's been 6 now. But in some respects, no. The only thing that I learned after the fact was, and it wasn't just for seeded dollars, is that I think you can get hurt in mint state if you're not buying the very top coin, because there are I can tell you there have been eras where there have been a lot of lower mint state coins that got pushed up, and it did have a big effect on pricing.
All right. We do have a few more online, but were there any others in the room?
Yeah. Stephen, did you give any thought to regrading the entire set before you put it up for sale?
Yeah, I did. We did move the 71cc from an NGC holder to a PCGS holder. And then there was some thought that the 50 and a MS64 rattler, because it historically had been in a gem rating back in 68 and in that era. But it was in a rattler. It was well known as by far the finest known. I'd owned the 2nd finest known before I owned that one. And that coin was what it was. That coin really, the person who purchased it got a bargain, because Hansen was supposed to bid on it. Was Bruce Moreland and Hansen had both said the only seeded dollar they'd ever wanted that they didn't own was owned by a guy in Ohio, and that was it. And Hansen didn't bid it. So for whatever reason. So the person who purchased it did real well. But whether it was in a 5 or a 4, since it was in a PC rattler, I don't think it made any difference. And we left it there.
Why is July a bad time to sell, and when is a good time?
I think July, the summer months are bad simply because people go away. I mean, just like Wall Street, people go away on vacations, et cetera. Um, I I think probably the best time to buy is the best time to sell and buy is probably in the fun time frame. But even beginning in late fall, I think it picks up. Um, my view was, and I've still been off a little bit, that I needed, once I made the decision in January of 22 that I needed to get it on the market. It just took some time to get the catalogs made and get it into an auction. Um, and so I think the fall through the early spring are the best months to sell.
All right, anything else in the room? Okay, we do still have a few in Zoom. Do you have any feel for how many of your coins were purchased at the auction by dealers versus direct to collectors?
I don't. I know I was told later that the 70S was actually purchased by Heritage, which was interesting. I don't know that for a fact, other than I was told that. I know there were several Liberty Seated coin collector members who purchased one-offs of these coins. And I think one member purchased a couple of them. I think that one of the rarest coins in the set was the 72S and MS63 CAC. I think they're only at MS63 or above. I think there's only, it's a commoner date in lower grades, but in higher grade MS, that coin just doesn't exist. I waited almost 10 years to get that coin. So that coin sold for a lot because people that knew, and it was bought by a member of LSCC. I know that for a fact. But the overall ratio, I don't know.
Okay, anything in the room? Nope. Did you purchase any raw coins and have them graded, or were they all slabbed when you bought them?
In the final set, none of the coins were purchased raw. I tried a raw one time and got burned, which told me I didn't know how to grade as well as I thought I did. So my view on these, it's and I actually took, I think 4 or 5 of my coins, maybe it was more than that, maybe it was 8, were not cacked. And I took those personally to John Albanese and ran them through because I didn't know whether it had been run through or not. And we got a couple of them through. The one thing that I did, and I'll tell the audience, is I wrote a series of articles in Gebrecht Journal for all the seated series on percent cacked. It was done about 2 years ago. And what you learn right away is that the rarities are rarely cacked. And I asked John about that, and he said, well, especially for seated dollars, they tend to be overgraded. My 51, in my opinion, I'd seen all of them from AU 58 up, and it was by far the third finest known, the Wong specimen. And he did not cack it. He said, well, it's really, really close. I don't know what that means, but there's only about 60 in existence, so only 2 have cacked in terms of NGC or PCGS holders. So my advice is, especially for rarities, if you want them in a certain holder and you want them cacked, you almost have to buy that. Your odds of getting it through raw all the way through that system, or even if it's in a holder and you want it cacked, I think the odds are against you getting that done. And then you end up with a coin that may be hard to turn. So that's my advice. If you're really trying to put together a top-notch set, that's probably buy the coin that's already in the right holder and that you want and cacked, because I think it's going to be hard on the rarities. Most of those have probably been there and they're going to be hard to get through.
All right, then that was the last one that we had in Zoom for now. So if you're watching online, go ahead and send in any last minute questions. Otherwise, last chance for the room. Yeah.
So Stephen, I know you're working on some other sets and other series. Are there any lessons you've taken from the sale of the dollars and applied it toward other sets that you're still working on?
Yeah, I mean, all my friends in LSCC won't appreciate my comments, but I have switched almost entirely to gold. And I know Len and you and I are both looking at certain series in gold, but I've been stunned at having paid pretty strong money in the last 3 years for some of these gold coins. And the numbers are now, I mean, I'm assuming that these numbers are right on what they're selling for now. I'm in great shape. So I don't know how long that run continues. But it's been an observation that the gold coins are really accelerating in terms of price. I don't know, Len, if what your observations are in that dimension as well, because I know you're looking at some of that.
I honestly haven't been doing it long enough to have a well-formed opinion, so, but I'm having a lot of fun with, collecting them now.
Yeah. And the old rule of thumb, which is true, and I tried to do that actually, was I did buy the keys first, as much as I could, because when those do come along, you got to grab them. I mean, there are some of those, like that 73S in MS63 CACT, it could be 10 or 15 years before another one of those come up.
All right, we have another one online. You showed one toned coin. Were there any others that were toned, and did that make any difference in how they performed?
The reason I showed that one is the photograph that Legend took, with all due respect, was awful. I mean, it was dark, but it didn't have that look. But yeah, even the 50O was toned. One thing you do learn with time on silver, especially, is that really toned coins are actually preferred as long as they're not problem coins, because it means they obviously haven't been stripped. The really bright, shiny coins you like at first as a new collector, but you learn later that those really have been dipped or cleaned. It's the whole issue of cleaning is very subjective, and obviously a lot of these coins have been cleaned. The question is, have they been cleaned too much? And that's the narrow band that's hard for early collectors to understand, the difference between what's acceptable amount of stripping or cleaning and what's not. But technically a coin that's toned is original. I'll give you an example. One of the favorite sets of coins I own is a set of Cincinnati commemoratives, where I bought it in the original mailer to the individual who received it. And the coins have a really mottled toning. Obviously they're about 80 years old, but it tells you what happens to a silver coin if nobody touches it. It turns out it's not particularly pretty, but it's original.
All right. I have nothing else in Zoom. Last chance in the room. Nope. Okay. Then I will go ahead and wrap us up. And if anything else comes in over Zoom, we will come back to that at the end. So all of these presentations are being recorded. The recordings will be available on the NNP about 2 weeks from today. If you are watching online, you should be registered, in which case you will get an email when those are available. There will also be an announcement on our website and social media. I am pretty sure everyone here in person has already heard my spiel about registering if you have not, so I will not repeat myself again. And that's all I've got. So let me check the Q&A. We're good. We have our last presentation coming up next at 5:30 Central. We will have Mike Nodelman talking about the making of the Coin Show podcast and how they do that. So if you've ever been interested in how to make a podcast or want to know why they do theirs, join us for that one. Otherwise, thank you so much, Stephen, for your presentation. We haven't had a ton of viewpoints over the years of after having sold a collection. So that was a very interesting topic that we haven't heard a lot of. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Take care now.
Of course. Thank you. And hope to see everyone back for our last presentation of this season's NNP Symposium.